It appears Republican lawmakers face an uphill battle to pass their health care plan, which is scheduled for a House vote tomorrow. A number of conservatives are reluctant to go along with the bill, even though President Trump and some Republican leaders are putting on the pressure. Charlene Aaron has the story.
President Trump is trying to close the deal on the GOP health care plan. Asked if he could get the votes after going to Capitol Hill to meet with House Republicans. But the president warned conservatives opposing the bill that a no vote could cost them in next year's midterm elections.
We're going to make sure that we remember those who stood by us.
If we fail to get it done, fail to meet the promises made by all of us, including the president, then it could have a very detrimental effect to Republicans in 2018 who are running for re-election, said Representative Mike Conway of Texas. He added, if it fails, then there will be a lot of people looking for work in 2018. The House Republican leadership has made concessions to try to secure more votes and appease skeptical conservatives. The GOP plan scales back the role of government in the private health insurance market and limits future federal financing for Medicaid. It would also repeal tax increases on high-income earners and do away with Obamacare's penalties, requiring all Americans have health care. But even with revisions, passage of the bill remains uncertain. A senior White House official says the administration is trying to persuade about 20 to 25 opposed or undecided House Republicans. All Democrats in the House are expected to vote no, but 22 Republican no votes would kill the bill. But the persuasion has worked for some members who are now on board.
There are a few other things I might have liked to get, but yeah, this moved me and it moved some others, and hopefully it'll get us over the line.
If the measure fails, it could hurt the possibilities for moving on to the president's next priority, his plans for helping the economy, including tax cuts for businesses and individuals. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. Pat, back to you.
Well, you know, the stock market had quite a dip yesterday. It was the first time that it has had a serious drop in a number of months. And I think the reason is the uncertainty about the passage of the tax cuts. The president has been promising major tax revision and major tax cuts. They don't have to revise the IRS code. They just don't have to do that. That's too big a task. All they have to do is cut several brackets, especially for small businesses, take away the corporate tax, lower it to a more sustainable level, and 2 or 3 other moves, and it would be a major thrust forward for the economy. And that's what the average American is concerned about, is how much money is he going to have to pay in taxes, not about health care. Health care is important, but that is vital. Well, the Koreans have a lot of bluster, but they also have some failure, and one of the failures blew up in the Sea of Japan. John has that.
That's right, Pat. Korea's latest missile test ended in failure today. The U.S. Pacific Command says the missile appears to have exploded within seconds of launch. Now, it is unclear what kind of missile it was, though many weapons experts warn North Korea could have a functioning nuclear-tipped missile capable of reaching the continental U.S. within a few years. Well, in an exclusive story CBN News broke this morning, we've learned that President Trump will deliver the commencement address at Liberty University in May. Now, Trump is no stranger to the school. He spoke twice before at Liberty's convocation. And University President Jerry Falwell Jr. was among his most prominent evangelical backers during the presidential campaign. In a statement provided exclusively to CBN News, the president told us, quote, "I look forward to speaking to this amazing group of students on such a momentous occasion. Our children truly are the future, and I look forward to celebrating the success of this graduating class, as well as sharing lessons as they embark on their next chapter full of hope, faith, optimism, and a passion for life." For more on this story and President Trump's impact with evangelicals so far, you can head over to the Brody File on CBNNews.com, where David Brody and our White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon will provide more analysis. Well, in health news, millions of Americans are walking around with a silent killer inside their bodies and don't even know it. High blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for strokes and a leading cause of heart attack. But as Lori Johnson explains, there's a way to help lower high blood pressure through a diet that works as effectively as medication.
A whopping 1/3 of American adults have potentially deadly high blood pressure, also called hypertension. That's 80 million people. Half of them do not have it under control. 1/5 don't even know they have it. The good news is Duke University researchers developed the DASH diet, a great way to get and keep your blood pressure in the healthy range.
It can lower blood pressure at levels equivalent to what you might get from medication. And so we think of it as just as effective as the blood pressure medications that are out there today.
The DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, consists of lots of vegetables and fruits, also beans, nuts, fish, poultry, and whole grains. What's not on the diet are fast foods and processed foods. That means no sugar, hydrogenated oil, processed meats, or white flour. Doctors have known about the DASH diet for 20 years now and have been recommending it to their patients with high blood pressure. But researchers discovered only 1% of Americans fully follow it, and just 20% follow it halfway. That's because of America's so-called food environment. Fast foods and processed foods are everywhere, while the foods on the diet aren't as commonplace. Also, they generally take longer to prepare and typically cost more. However, there are ways to spend less while getting more healthy, nutritious foods.
Frozen fruits and vegetables are really low costs and can be easily accessible in supermarkets, just like the convenience foods that are available in the next aisle. Other foods like beans, whether they be cooked or uncooked, and nuts, those things also tend to be less expensive and are very rich in the nutrients that we know are helpful for lowering blood pressure.
So while following the DASH diet might require spending more time and money on food, in the long run you may end up saving on blood pressure medication you won't need, and you could end up saving something else, your life. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Thanks, Lori. And Pat, with fruits and vegetables, nuts and whole grains, it sounds a lot like the DASH diet. Could easily be called the Pat diet.
Sounds like the Pat diet. Pat knows better, and Pat is big on fish. I tell you, I want to give you a secret. It's easy. There's something that I can get at the health food store. It's called Norwegian cod liver oil. Mm-hmm. And it has all that nasty fish taken out of sea. A teaspoon of that stuff, fabulous fish oil.
Yeah, it's
fabulous.
very important.
Yeah, they've got an EPA, DHA, and all that stuff, but it's got it all in it. The other thing is dark chocolate, and I know ladies, you like chocolate, but dark chocolate without all the sugar and stuff is extremely good for lowering blood pressure. But I'm getting older than Moses, and I'm not going to submit to this stuff, but I eat a lot of nuts, I eat a lot of berries, and I like vegetables where I can get them, and I love beans. And beans are just fantastic.
You've been adhering to this for a while,
well,
advocating it for all of us.
It's so much better. I mean,
Yes.
you know, you don't have to eat them. But I eat pizza, for heaven's sakes. I like this stuff.
I think you can do it once in a while if
Sure.
you're doing the
Well,
other
I
most
mean,
of the
hey,
time.
Good pizza.
Yeah.
It's an American tradition taken from Italy. All right.
Indeed. Well, up next, the woman who was President Reagan's executive assistant reflects on her time working for the Gipper.
What does a cowboy give another president? You give him a cowboy hat. So I was tasked with finding a cowboy hat for Gorbachev.
Peggy Grandy pulls back the curtain on Reagan's final years in public office or public life after this.
Friend, do you remember when it felt good to withdraw your cash from the bank to expand a business, go on vacation, or buy a new car? Well, today, withdrawing your own cash has become a very risky business, according to The Secret War, a shocking new research report. I just read it. And folks, I was amazed to learn why banks are now required to spy on us for the government and then report any suspicious or unusual behavior. I suggest you get The Secret War free. Just call the number on the screen, no charge, from the folks at Swiss America, and get this. Did you know simply spending cash today may be enough to have you branded as a potential criminal? That's right. The new war on cash is really a war against all freedom-loving Americans. The secret war is yours free, so call the number on the screen and you can tell them Pat Boone gave you the number.
Inside a deadly get-rich scheme perpetrated by Uganda's witch doctors.
You need to sacrifice human blood.
CBN News brings us the explosive story. Then, Scott Ross sits down with the #1 name in Christian music. Stephen Curtis Chapman looks back at his Hall of Fame career. Plus, the entrepreneurs who landed a deal in the Shark Tank. The founders of Grace and Lace share their story Thursday.
I don't know if you're like me, but I miss the Gipper. I really, really loved Ronald Reagan. I really admired him, and I considered him a friend, but wonderful. I've been with him at the White House, and I've been with him in other, when he was running for president. He was a tremendous guy, and he was a great president. There's a book about him. His very beautiful secretary has written a book humanizing him, showing Reagan at home in the White House and showing the kindness that he extended toward other people. And I think it's interesting, but Ronald Reagan is beloved today for both the way he changed the world and the way he conducted himself as America's 40th president. Now, a woman who worked for him in his later years is telling that part of his story. Here's CBN News White House correspondent Jennifer Wishon with that.
Nearly 3 decades after President Ronald Reagan left the White House, the Gipper remains as classic as his wardrobe. He's a conservative superstar Republicans love to quote, and his image is a favorite for political internet memes.
I think now more than ever, we're wondering what real leadership looks like, what it can look like at the highest and best, and Ronald Reagan certainly provides a great example of that.
Peggy Grandy worked as Reagan's executive assistant for a decade after he left office. In her new book, The President Will See You Now, she pulls back the curtain on Reagan's final years in public life.
You know, we don't know in life why we're put in the places we are, and I have no idea why God chose to, pluck this young woman from obscurity and drop her at the feet of greatness, but I determined that I would be a good steward of that role.
She witnessed firsthand Reagan's diagnosis and struggle with Alzheimer's. It was an adventurous job that placed a girl fresh out of college in the midst of world leaders, like the time Reagan invited his friend Mikhail Gorbachev to his ranch in California. Grandy had to find a special gift for the former communist leader of the Soviet Union.
And so what does a cowboy give another president? You give him a cowboy hat. So I was tasked with finding a cowboy hat for Gorbachev. So the pressure was on to make sure it wasn't just a Stetson, but it had to be a little different than the president, so they weren't too matching. And it also had to fit Gorbachev. So how on earth do you figure out Gorbachev's hat size?
After a number of overnight calls to Moscow and faxes with hand-drawn diagrams, Grandy finally got a hat size.
It did fit him, but we did get a call from Stetson a few days later saying that he had put the hat on backwards. So the best laid plans, sometimes there's only so much you can do.
And what about Reagan's relationship with his wife, Nancy? Was their love really as epic as it's been portrayed?
They were so cute to see together. I mean, if they could be on opposite sides of the room, and it was like magnets that just eventually wound up being drawn back together. They were never just standing side by side. He was always holding her hand, or he'd put his arm around to the small of her back, and just a genuine love for each other. The delight that would light up his eyes when she walked into the room. And, every now and then I'd go around the corner in the office and maybe find them hugging or kissing in the hallway, and Secret Service would kind of be backs to them thinking, okay, I'll leave them alone. But, these were older people, and they still had such a genuine love for each other.
When Reagan went public with his Alzheimer's diagnosis, Grandy saw her professional purpose sharpen into focus.
As a Christian myself, I knew that this man was a great man of faith, and so it was important to me to not only serve him in a professional capacity, but also to be aware of his faith and how I could support that, especially in those later years. He loved going to church, and it was very difficult after he made the Alzheimer's announcement because the paparazzi would show up, and it was very disruptive to the church and the other parishioners. And so it was important to make sure that his pastor came and visited with him regularly and would come and bring the church bulletin and share with him a little summary of the message of that week.
When did you know that something wasn't quite right?
There were just some things that were very specific now we know to Alzheimer's that I started noticing. Stories he had told 1,000 times that maybe would stumble him up or he'd lose his place. But it was very uncharacteristic for him. By making it public, he wanted people to have research go to it, have awareness brought to the illness, and really take a lot of the shame and the stigma away from so many families that suffer from it.
Reagan is known as the great communicator. He and America's current president certainly have different styles, but Grandy thinks they'd have one thing in common.
I believe that Ronald Reagan would have been a tweeter, that he would have used social media to connect directly to people.
I would love to see what Ronald Reagan would tweet, actually.
Yeah, do you think he could tweet down that wall? I don't know.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Well, it's a very sweet book about a great man called The President Will See You Now. Peggy Grandy, confidential secretary for a number of years with the GOP, and that's available wherever books are sold. Terry.
Well, up next, a young girl dabbles in witchcraft and soon discovers a strange bedfellow.
Beside me was this dark figure. It had one of its hands on me. At that moment, I couldn't even scream or make a noise. I was so scared.
Watch what happens next to this teenage witch when we come back.
I don't know why I didn't get screened a long time ago. I kept putting it off. What was I thinking?
Okay, Mr. Jones, we're all done.
I told you it